Hello, Potters. I hope I'm in the right page. Let's see if I can find me on Clay Buddies. Well, give it a couple minutes. Hi, friends. Okay, enough of that. And I'm refreshing so that I can see it on my screen. And there's a bit of a delay. Hi, Tennessee, how are you? Hi, Stacy. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for putting this all together. Yay, volunteers. This has been so inspiring watching all kinds of people do great stuff. I'm waiting for it to load onto my iPad so that I can see, but you know, we can get started. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a little example of something one can make with paper clay. It's basically, I don't know how experienced you are with it or not, or if you're just curious, but for me, the benefits are I use any clay body that I'm normally working with, and I wedge it in on the spot. I don't buy commercial clay. If I'm doing something major, I would probably make some from scratch, but for me, because I am in between homes and moving and going to public studios a lot, this is ideal when I have a project that I'm going to sculpt on and take it back and forth a lot, and I need better green wear strength. And if I do it well, paper clay, and you can do it too, is about 50% stronger in green wear, which is a really good thing. It's also a lot easier to mend if you have cracks and things like that. So for me, this gal, Shelly, is a sculpture for my mailbox. And so I wanted her to be a little lighter, which is another benefit of the paper clay, because you're basically incorporating paper fiber into your clay and it burns off in the kiln. So, you know, it can look like anything. This looks just like a normal clay project. Still had a couple little cracks and things to fix, but it's nice and strong. This was only fired to cone 6, so it's an outdoor sculpture. It'll be installed outdoors, but it'll be installed in Florida. But I'm told that would probably be okay. I have larger sculptures, one that's, you know, probably 7 feet tall, huge, and that, let's see, that was cone 10 in reduction, but that's in Indiana's cold winter, so, and that's been out for several years, so it's really strong. Hi, Alicia. Oh, it's so fun seeing all these people. Thanks. Oh, that's so sweet. Shelly is a pretty girl, isn't she? I don't know how she got her name, but okay, so just going over the benefits. I'm going to set her aside because she's delicate. She needs to live on a mailbox. All right, so I'm not a saleswoman. I don't get a percentage of anything. And the joke I would have made before was like, oh my gosh, I'll do a demo of that because they can make it in 5 minutes with, you know, stuff they have around the house. And then I was like, oh, maybe not the right time for that. But if you can be picky with your TP, this is my preferred method for paper clay. And my favorite brand, yes, my favorite brand is Scott. And my second favorite, which is what I'm using tonight, not that you can be picky in today's world, I really like Aldi's brand of, it's thin, it's not fluffy, it has a lot of pulp in it, and this is important because you need pulp. That's why we're doing this. So, just a quick review. You can use any clay body that you're using, and you can do part of the piece. A lot of people learn about paper clay when they need to repair something. So you can do it for a repair. You can do it, you know, like oftentimes I'll make a bunch of handles and let them dry out to bone dry. Yes, folks, bone dry. I know if you're a normal potter using regular clay, it's like, ooh, the thing you would never let it do. It's the opposite of what you're used to. So I still work with clay lots of times, but when I have a project that I want to be lighter, or I'm going to haul it back and forth, if I want to single fire something, yes, you can single fire it. This is going to sound like a infomercial. It slices, it dices, it's lighter, it's stronger. You can single fire instead of two. But really, it is that cool. And whether you change what you do or just use it occasionally, I'm here to teach a couple things about it in hopes that you can use it in your practice. Okay, so we've got about 50% stronger in greenware stage. We have lighter, but what I mentioned earlier is just wet, dry joins. So basically, if you're doing a big structure, you know how you like, there's that time period where you want to let it set up to leather hard, and you want to keep it moist, and you know, we all stand on our heads and like get it just right in the window of plasticity. But paper clay is not like that. You intentionally dry it out between sessions. So if you're doing, let's say I'm building a gingerbread house out of paper clay rather than gingerbread, you would literally roll it out, use your template, whatever you want to do, and this would apply to any hand building that you want to do. You'd let it get bone dry before you work with it, which sounds a little crazy, and if you're used to regular clay, you'd be like, God, it's going to crack, but you know, it's stronger, which is a good thing, and you know, that's part of why is you have it already that strong, and then you get the edges wet, you re-wet it, like soaking wet for, you know, dip the edges in for a minute or two in water. And then you can apply a piece of wet paper clay to bone dry paper clay using paper clay slip or even regular slip. And yes, it joins. And I know this sounds crazy. Yes, tonight we're using single ply. And thanks for asking, Christina, because if you had double ply, when we get to the demo in a second, you would pull it apart, because that's important. Good question. Aloha, Kauai, Hawaii. Wow, awesome. I do. I love our little clay community. Little, right? But it's global. It's awesome. You're here. You're late. I'm sorry that I'm not doing yoga, and this is not my normal workstation. We're in my kitchen, right? Like I don't have granite countertops in my my fancy potter's studio. But anyway, I digress. That's what I do. Okay, so you want to have pieces you can like dry out and store. You can re-wet them anytime. So it just changes the way you work with regular clay. So you don't have to always do it, and you can have, tonight I'll show you, I threw a couple bodies of mugs, and the handles are handles I've had laying around, and they can get they can get like bone dry. So the handles are paper clay. The mugs are just regular porcelain that I had on hand. So yeah, yeah, I can spare a square, but not much more. The other thing I want to tell you is if you feel like making a little bit of paper clay, and if you can spare a square, feel free to go grab, and I'm not saying you should, and I don't want to cause any hostility in any households, but if you are rich in resources like I am, which was an accident, by the way, I didn't hoard, then you can make a little tonight. It won't take much, but you can play with it. Okay, so I've just gone on and on about the benefits, which are awesome, and it's like I'm a sales lady, but I'm not. I mentioned single firing. Okay, so the thing I want to tell you about paper clay, it's not just that you're wedging some toilet paper into your clay. Yeah, that's true, that's what's happening. But as you know, clay is mineral particles, so they're platelets, and they're gonna stack, and it's got a memory, and it has all these things, which we love and sometimes hate. But what you're introducing are plant fiber, cellulose fiber, and that is the game changer. The cellulose fiber has its own structure, and if you weave it in well, if you incorporate it into the matrix of your clay, you will have a different medium, a different object that you're working with. So it's kind of a hybrid. It's like worlds colliding between plants and rocks, and I'm a geologist, I'm an ecologist, so this is like, woo! Okay. Enough about that, but basically you're making something new. You're making a hybrid of clay and plant tissue, so you've got this new strength. So you don't have as much warping. I know, it's like a saleswoman. Less warping, less shrinkage. You have within 1% of the same shrinkage, so, and that's probably a good thing. But you don't have as much deformation, so your clay will still have a memory. Hey Alabama, is the shrinkage rate? Yes, the shrinkage rate is usually within 1% of the body that you're using. So for instance, I threw, it was still kind of wet, but I threw a couple little, porcelain, and then my paper clay that I'm about to wedge up in front of you all is porcelain. So I find that it's usually within 1%, and I can go up to maybe even 5%. So it depends on how much benefit you want, and you can play with it. You can also make this as a Band-Aid. I really mean it, like a Band-Aid. If this were paper clay, you could smear out, I'm not joking, almost dry, like a little Band-Aid. If you had a cup, this is my cup, and you had a crack, you could actually take a really thin smear of paper clay in any condition, dip it in regular slip or paper clay slip, stick it on, and it literally can help bind that after the fire, after you've got a little higher chance of success, something like 50% or so in bisque, which is good. You would just re-bisque and hope for the best. But I read about it, I didn't think it was true, but I actually did repair a piece that had already come out of Cone 10 high fire. So back to the cellulose. The thing about the cellulose, hey, Deb Beam from the Art Center, nice to see you. Great, well, nice to see that you're watching. Back to the cellulose fiber. So the thing that is the game changer is not just that structure for the structural part, but it's that it's moving water. It has like capillary action like that, but it's basically able to move water through the piece. So if this were bone dry and this were paper clay, this big lunk, you could fire this in a kiln and you would not have any problem with the expansion. Isn't that crazy? Hey Carol, wow, so nice to see all these folks, South Carolina. It's like good news happening in our country, right? In our world. So I went on and on, like it slices, it dices. So less shrinkage but it moves water through. So the other thing is you can fire it like same day. If you ramp up slowly in your green, you can fire it that day, which is crazy. Clay likes us to take time and we're trained to wait. So for beginners, this is sometimes a really good thing. Like it helps them manage through the difficulty of mastering that window of plasticity, because it's also more plastic. I don't know how many of you are kids of a certain age like myself and played with silly putty, but I hope if you've got a lunk of clay sitting around, and I hope most of you do, and you make a little, spare a square or two, you'll feel the difference. If you haven't already experienced paper clay, it's a little more spongy like silly putty. It springs back. So that's another weird and different thing. You let it dry out between sessions. You can join completely bone dry to wet pieces, which doesn't sound possible because it's like, wait, one is gonna shrink and one is gonna stay the same. That's okay with paper clay. So you can use a regular body like the bodies of the mugs I have, and then you can add a paper clay handle to it, which is a really good application because you can make 50 handles, let them get bone dry, throw them in a drawer, and when you're ready, throw your bodies and do some attaching, which is kind of fun. So Western New York, oh, we love you in New York. Hope you all are okay. Oregon, how fun. Yes, toilet paper. Okay, reclaim, yeah. No. Yes and no. Okay, so there are different types of paper clay. Like you can start from slip and you can do dry weights of your clay and dry weights of your pulp and work on some really highly technical percentages. That's not what I'm doing tonight. And there's a great book that I put a little sheet on there on the page to give you the recommendation. I'm following Rosette Galt's book. She's a PhD in ceramics, which I've learned you can get. And she studied and has advanced the medium, and she's a godsend. I'm like, just, nah. Anyway, so, all right, back on track. Lost my thought track there, thinking about all the cool things happening. So, a lot of applications for this, but you can basically just make it anytime you want if you want to just use a studio method like this. So, you've got your lunk of clay around, and you've got some of this. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to talk safety. That's where I was going with that. Okay, here's a couple drawbacks. One is it has a shelf life. That's serious. Yay, Florida. I'm in Florida too. It's been so hot here. We shouldn't complain because not everybody has hot weather like us. Yay, Canada. Okay, so the drawbacks, they're not that bad. This is organic matter. This stuff does want to dissolve quickly in the clay. So that's a good thing for us. That's not a good thing for you if you're trying to avoid mold. You have usually a week or so. You should label. If you make paper clay, keep it separate from your regular clay. Label it. If you intend to keep it moist, be on it. Do not let black mold grow, because I promise you it will, because this is organic matter. This is paper. And eventually, within a week or two, or maybe less, if you have a van and you live in Florida and you forget about it, hey Nancy, maybe less, right? If you see black mold, throw it out. Like, make sure it's sealed and throw it out. Do not leave that in your studio. Do not put it with your remix. That was the question earlier. Yes, I use remix all the time, but when I do paper clay, I keep that separate. When I trim, sometimes I do have wheel thrown pieces because I have to dry them quickly, like I'll torch them, dry it quick. I save those scraps and they go in my paper clay bin. So the way to manage that shelf life, the first drawback, is you let it dry out. If you didn't use it, or you have those handles, right, or anything you do, you can put it in little patties, let it dry out all the way, like just put it in a drawer. It's just not like our normal clay where you're like, ooh, keep it moist, don't let it freeze. You can let it dry out all the way to bone dry. It won't grow mold that way, and you can re-wet it at any time. So one nice thing I do for that is this isn't very big, but I'll make patties like about this size. If I got leftover and I'm done or whatever, just let them dry out, label it, set it aside, and it's like, okay, that's paper clay. Then you can re-wet it anytime you want. Italy, yay! Oh, I feel so good and bad, but so much love coming from all over the world. And it is such an important time. So, okay, so you're gonna let it dry out between sessions, and you're not gonna let black mold grow. And if you work in any public studio, you are not gonna let this get in the reclaim, and you're gonna make sure you emphasize this to anyone you share this cool tip and trick with, because they do not want black mold. It is the black mold that will grow in your drywall walls. It can really ruin a place and hurt a lot of people. It is a health issue. So avoid that safety issue, that trap. And the other safety thing that I have to mention is even with a little bit of paper clay, your kiln has got to be vented properly. I don't know, you should know this if you're firing anything, but do make sure you mention this to the tech or whoever's firing for you. They need to have good ventilation. They already should, but there will be a little bit of additional smoke with your paper. And I think it's like 451-ish, this will burn off. But so cellulose fiber has a range. I like using this because I know what's in it. Think of the tender parts, right? So you can use paper clay with cellulose fiber that goes into buildings. I have never used the bag paper clay. They do sometimes incorporate bleach. I do know that you can add borax as a growth retardant, but borax also serves as a flux. So depending on how high you're gonna go, I had mentioned earlier that I fired a cone 10, and I've had pieces do really well. I did a little picture of some paper clay slip, so strong. It was porcelain slip, cone 10, and I think that part of the kiln even made it to 11 in a wood fire. And they were cicada shells that I dipped in paper clay slips. So they were super thin, like you could see through them, and they made it. And they literally just like took a tiny, I don't know, it was magical. They're paper thin because all that was left was like just a thin smear of the porcelain and a very tiny coating of the ash. It was magic. So anyway, again, I digress. It's so fun to hang with y'all. Let me see. The bag paper clay, yes. So I haven't used that, but I did provide a link for that. Rosette Galt, the lady that wrote the book that I'm giving you tips from, does offer her own. I think it's called Galt, and it's at Aardvark Clay. So I have not tried it. I'm just me, and I travel a lot, so I have to be able to if I want paper clay, whip it up. And after this, you'll be able to too. Yeah, you can use it as soon as you make it. You can keep it moist. You got a week or so. I like it for things like maquettes and things that I'm going to dry out, because you just let it sit and dry. And if you're going to lug it around, like in your toolbox or wherever, you can keep doing that. So I don't know. Personally, I like that an awful lot. You can use it as you make it, and you don't have to let it dry. If you're doing structural stuff, yeah, you let it dry, which is so cool. And then you can keep rewetting it, which I don't know if any of you as potters, Australia, g'day mate. I don't know if any of you as potters are procrastinators. I myself have a little problem with that sometimes. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing for you, but working with paper clay, you can just like pick up a piece and start working on it. It can sit for months. It can be completely bone dry, and you're just gonna wet it, wait. You can also sponge wet parts of it, because again, the water wants to move through that body pretty well, pretty efficiently, way different than normal clay. And the more pulp, the better on that. So you don't want to go, much past like 10, 20%. But tonight, what we'll be doing is just putting a little bit of pulp in. We don't want to use much, but I promise you, it will feel different. You know how clay feels in your hands. Just a little bit can really make a big difference. So let's get going on this a little bit. All right, so here's my lunk of clay. This is called the studio method. So yeah, happy to share. So what I'm gonna do, I can't see, all I see are comments, but I'm just gonna take a wire and slice my my ball of clay, which I've not wedged or anything. I'm just gonna make these like little thin slices. And there's nothing to it. They don't have to be even, they don't have to be pretty. These certainly are neither. But they're just slices, okay? So, if any of you were doing this at home, it doesn't take long, right? It's a 5-minute thing. So back to the 2-ply question. If you have 2-ply, you need to just use one. Take the time while your hands are dry and pull them apart. What I don't want is any overlap. That's why I've gone to the trouble of making them all, these little slices. So I'm just gonna lay this here. Tiny bit of overlap. But what I don't want are like really thick knots, all right? So you can probably see pretty well. It just looks like toilet paper on top of clay, doesn't it? Because that is what it is. So if I was getting ready to make something with this and it were regular clay, I would not do this because I just spritzed water. I hope what you can see is that it's translucent now. Here's a piece of toilet paper that's dry. So you need to spray and make sure you get all the white parts, wet, saturated. And then all you do is you put the piece on that, and you put another piece down, give it a little spritz. Got it? And then you put another piece on that. And you can see this is not a lot of pulp getting in here. Okay? There it's a little bit white. So I'm not letting it bend. I don't want like little wads, bunched up bits of tissue paper, because that means it won't be incorporated into my matrix. So, oh, that's so sweet. Hi, Carol. Haven't seen you in a while, gosh. Oh, BC, Canada. Oh, I love BC. Yay, sandwich. Okay, so I'm just repeating. I'm just like taking a slice. It is like making a sandwich. I'm making a sandwich. Clay sandwich, TP sandwich. So that's it. I'm just gonna put them on. And this is actually a lot more clay than I would normally use, but and that's all there is to it for now. So that is pretty easy. Everybody feel comfortable with that? Am I gonna squeeze the Charmin? No, golly no. Yeah, I'm not into Charmin. I'm I grew up on a farm and I like the Scott tissue. There's a utility to it, there's a dependability, and that was just me as a human consumer. But I read a little about paper clay, so here's my sandwich. You see there aren't any like big white edges where I didn't get it wet. And this is kind of wet, but remember, it's gonna dry out really quickly. So, I missed a moment. This is plain clay. What I had on hand, I had some really rough remix. And then I had some nice porcelain, so I grabbed the nice porcelain. And now all I'm doing is wedging it. And remember how wet it was? Like if this was normal clay, I'd be like, oh man, now I gotta wait a half an hour for that to dry. I don't know about low fire. I'm a mid-range and high fire gal. So I think the answer is yes. This should change your, whatever body you're using, it should change it within 1%. And you should experiment with these things, you know, do a little test demo. This is not my normal wedging table. And Dawn, thank you for the ergonomics, the gal that just did yoga. I'm improvising with some, this is actually a table I work on as a chef, but it's working. Okay, so now I've wedged it. And if I just needed it to be a little stronger in greenware, this would probably be enough pulp. I'm wedging on a piece of canvas that a friend gave me for a different project that is C-clamped down to a stainless steel commercial kitchen table. Yeah, can use this with low fire clay. Okay, I think I got most of your questions. So it must be good with low fire clay because I think on the really high fire stuff, like some of the very thin porcelain, you might have a little bit of bend or warping, and if you had a high pulp ratio, in that case, if it's like a very thin wall, and the answer, like this suggested workaround from Rosette's book, is that you fire to a cone or two lower. But I've been successfully doing this with cone 10, 11 in Indianapolis for a number of years, and I've also done it here now in Florida at cone 6, so with good success, so no problem. But the crazy thing is that you can fix things after bisque and possibly even high fire. So the percentage isn't as good on repair, but I thought the surface of clay was closed, fully vitrified after cone 10. I mean, that is to some extent true, but with the cellulose fiber clay, those voids in the clay body will receive more paper clay, and that literally happened. And we were all like, whoa. I mean, it was like scandalous fun and crazy in the potter world in Indianapolis, because I was like, I don't know, like a preacher with pamphlets, like, have you experienced paper clay? So yeah, I mean, I think it was good they made fun of me, but then things like that happened and we were like, holy cow, I don't know about bamboo. I would think so, because that's a cellulose fiber. Okay, so round 1. If you just do that, it's really not a lot of pulp. This already feels a little different, and I don't know if you can see much on the dryness, but it really is like it's drying out a little and it's workable. It's not overly wet. And if this were regular clay, all those little spritzes, even though they were spritzes, that'd be too wet. And of course it's porcelain, so I'd be like, no, I'm not ready, don't work with me. Hey Denise, so fun. Okay, so I think bamboo would work for sure. I'm using this because I know what's in it, and I don't want to introduce, like, you can use newspaper and things like that, but there are inks and things that I don't know about and I don't want introduced into my kiln. And I'm also now, I'm firing at a public studio, so I'm just, happy that they let me do this. But if your kiln is well ventilated, it shouldn't be a problem, but you should make sure the tech knows, because it's gonna be like, what is all that smoke coming from? Oh, Holly did a paper clay piece. I mean, a tiny bit won't be a lot, but yeah, it will. Yes, functional wear, sure, but here's the deal. It is lighter. The finished product is lighter because the paper does burn off, and it's still a very strong vessel. However, I thought, wow, cool. That's great for dishes. I love them lighter and strong. However, they do conduct better. So, that soup mug thing, I mean, you don't want it to get all that hot. So, for me, I'll throw mugs with regular clay, and they're wet. Like I've got a couple sitting up now. And then I'll attach bone dry clay handles, paper clay handles to them. So the handle isn't a problem at all, but I don't want the heat moving through the body. But yes, definitely functional wear. It depends on what you're making, and good handles on a casserole, things like that. I think that'd be another good application. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat what I just did, even though this is paper clay. I'm gonna do one quick thing to show, just like when you're new at wedging. It's kind of cooler when we're like a bunch of bubbles, because I should be good at this, right? And actually made fun of a couple friends recently at a volunteer thing, which, man, I'm glad. Okay, all right, anyway. So just like when you're wedging and you got to check your work, you know, you wire it, you do that with your paper clay, because if you've tried this, you don't want gobs and blobs. That is not going to work out for you. I definitely was like a preacher. Right, have you accepted paper clay as your personal savior? Okay, so this looks good, all right? If I saw little wads of paper all, that's not going to be good. That's going to, when it fires, is going to be a void. And, you know, that's maybe a best case scenario, because it could happen where you're going to have a joint and, you know, you want strong, good structure. And you want that cellulose all, you know, married to your clay. That's what makes it so magical. They really got to bind. So without spending any extra money or, you know, doing anything special or extra, I just made paper clay here at my house. And you can do it too. So just a quick recap. And I have faith in you. I think you can all do this. So I just made some quick, ugly slices. I'm going to, because I'm an industrial kind of gal, I'm just going to cover them. And I'll do it this way. So remember, I'm spraying it with my mister, and this is just water. In fact, it's only water, as indicated. And there aren't any white spots, right? You get me. Like, I didn't leave chunks of it unsaturated, because what I want that to start doing, and it will, I want it to just start dissolving. And that's what it's going to do. All right. And I really want it to become part of the clay. Yeah, so there's like all kinds of different clay, paper clay, ways to buy it, ways to, you know, but this is like a very quick and dirty method to get what you need or want. And again, I'm gonna take my shoes off because of what Dawn said. Oh, that is better. Thank you for all the love. Our community is so important to me. What was the original mount? Yeah, the original mount that I just did the first time would have been okay, but I would like more. I'd like a little more strength, and I'd like, for instance, if I just wanted it to be a little stronger, that would be fine. I could stop there. But if I wanted to fully dry out, like bone dry in between and join, like I like doing, joining handles or things, you know, surface decoration pieces, then I want a little more pulp in there, because I know that it's not going to have those characteristics unless I add a little more pulp. All right, wow. It's a crappy wedging table, but, you know, we're improvising. I shouldn't complain. It's a lot nicer in here than my studio. It's definitely better lit, which is why I'm here. Don't have a good signal in the garage, so this is a good sign. No bubbles, right? Because I'm past being a Potter 101. But most importantly, you don't see bits of paper wadded up in little balls. So yes, it's awesome for sculpture. And because I did a good job incorporating it into my body, I can get very fine detail. If I so desire. I don't see any little rollers, but if I want, you know, I can get really tight detail. If I have some texture rollers laying around, of course, outside, out of reach, but you can get really good detail. I've also thrown with this, and no problems, you know, but you have to do a good job incorporating that pulp into there. And, you know, this is the easiest way. You can start wet, you can do a bunch of things, but this is the main thing we're focusing on, the quick and dirty way. So, okay. The other thing about, I mentioned the single fire thing. So you can, because it moves moisture through the piece, and remember you could fire, like, if it's bone dry, a big block of it and not explode. That principle is really important, because in single firing, like, you literally, if you switch to all paper clay in your practice, you could save a ton of money in carbon if you went to single firing. You literally let it get to bone dry. You carefully dip it or spray your glaze on, and the texture ends up the same at the surface. It's pretty cool. So there's the problem, the reason we fire twice is to make sure that make sure that the glass in the glaze gets, is able to fuse. All the moisture has to be gone. But in this case, it's okay that it's bone dry and there's a little moisture in, because it's still going to work through, which is pretty awesome. So that it means you wouldn't have to bisque fire. You could let it get bone dry and dip it and really carefully let it dry out before you move it, because that is the only problem we had. We did test this in Indianapolis, and the only mishap we had was that my tech, because I didn't leave him a note, as we always do when we're loading, is like, and he didn't realize that was just greenware. I was like, oh. So, oh well, I don't know. 5 years, Tim, if Tim's watching, that's the only mistake he made with any of my pieces, and it was really my fault. So, okay, 10 to 20%. Yeah, I have not done more than that. And what you just saw is like maybe 1%. I mean, it was a very tiny little bit. But if anyone did this at home, it's spongy. Like this bounces back. And as wet as we got this, I sprayed it twice. And this is like, to me, this is just right. Like I don't feel like throwing. I'm still kind of getting over being sick. But yeah, this is like perfect. And as I mentioned, this is porcelain. So if I didn't put that paper fiber in there, it'd be like, maybe tomorrow it'll be ready. Because it's kind of late for me. Not a night gal. Sgraffito lines, yeah. No, they won't necessarily be less crisp if you... Will sgraffito lines, this is like a tongue twister and a question, be crisp and clear? Yes, but get this, and this is maybe a benefit and a drawback. The stuff is hard. This is a better tool, this has titanium in it. Thank you, Mary. I have so many great potter friends. These really need to be sharpened and loved better. But anyway, I have to use these because it is stronger. If I wait too long and cut my clay or do carving later, then it's stronger and it's harder to carve. So it might not be ideal for sgraffito applications, but you should try it. You should experiment, keep good notes, and then teach us what you learned, because it's kind of exciting. It's not everybody doing that. Yes, you can spray glaze on the greenware if it's paper clay and you've got at least 5% or so, and you want to test this first. I got a little dish. It's not laying here, but yeah. So you want to test it just like you do test tiles, and it has to be bone dry first. If it's like damp, it's not going to work out. If you take a piece, like here's a cup. Let's say this is just bone dry and it's paper clay, and obviously it's a little stronger than regular bone dry greenware because it's paper clay. I'm just going to dip it in, or whatever my method of, and then I'm going to set it. I might even just I remember with some of them I've done the inside and let it dry like a day or a long time, and then dip and do the outside, or vice versa, whatever order is better for you. But then I have to remember when I pick it up, it has to be dry before I pick it up, because it's still greenware. I have to be a little delicate with it because it's paper clay. It's unfired ware. So, but yeah, no problems in the kiln at all. I'm not going directly into high fire, which is pretty cool. That's a ton of energy. I don't just mean electricity and gas. I mean back-break and labor. So author's name, Rosette Gault, Gault. And oh man, is she awesome. So you can try this if you just need a Band-Aid fix. You can do that for pieces that you care about, that you need to fix. But I set a couple things aside because I was like, oh yeah, kind of thinking of the benefits. So one other cool thing, this is unfired clay, paper clay, and I was in a hurry. I needed this. I like doing this. It's a Van Gilder technique. You just trim the bottom of the pot, you compress and throw it really, really well. Let it dry a little on a board like this, and instead of trimming a bottom, if you've got that bottom pretty nice and thick, you give it a little onto. Typically, you'd make this into bisqueware, but I had some cool. I don't know if you can see them. Like little, star thingies. at the art center, and I was like, oh, I didn't have, I am like the most impatient potter, so that's probably why I'm teaching this. So this is just paper clay. This has never been fired. It's greenware, but I've used it for like a year because it's strong. Watch, I'll break it tonight. But I basically just use this on the bottom of mugs sometimes if I want this to be a fun little bottom, because, you know, it's nice to turn it over and get a little surprise. So what I have then is, you guys can see, so I got like a leather hard-ish piece of regular clay, right? Let's see how we did. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's about right, softness-wise. And I'm just gonna make it a little bit smoother, you know, like a baby's butt. Need my red rib. Do you guys all go red rib, red rib? Melicio, Melecito, like your mama used to say. Hello, Mel, good to see you. I love your face, I miss you. Okay, so I got a nice bare bottom, nice soft little baby's butt. Hold on, let me read that. Corey Sandler, go out, back in. Yeah, sometimes that fixes it, yes. All right, so I'm just gonna do like a, and I don't have the right tool, but I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna press down and move on. I overdid it a little bit, but that's basically, you get the point, right? Generally you don't poke a hole through, but my little handle's stuck. So that's one thing you can do, which is kind of fun. And that's because I had paper clay laying around and no patience to fire this stupid thing. The other thing that's kind of cool is it's not bisque. Like I don't, if I wanna, you know, if I grow bored with doing this little style of thing, which people kind of like, by the way, if I grow bored with that, no problem. I mean, it's still clay. I haven't, you know, submitted it to, you know, resigned it to being fired and done with for the rest of its life. It's something I can reuse, which is another cool thing, especially now that I'm in Florida. Mel, guess what I pay per bag of clay? People, you know, we all have different art centers we work at. We pay $50 a bag of clay because that includes our firing and our glaze, and it's important. But, you know, it really does make you recycle more. So, okay. Won't be able to use red rib. I thank you. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but red, I know. But once your other potter friends know the joke and they do it too, it's fun, right? Red rib, red rib. Okay. Let's see if I can do this without, yeah, that's pretty good. All right. So again, I just used my little mold and I got a nice little, so, you know, wow. I know, it slices, it dices. I think Mel may have been one of those people that initially called me the, you know, the preacher. But, you know, I still love paper clay. So, okay, so it's strong enough for you to use as a stamp of any kind that you want, and you can improvise, and you can leave them laying around for a year or two. That's totally my style, right? It's strong enough, and then reuse it when it's done. You can re-wet it. So, the last thing I was gonna do, now, these aren't really bone dry. I didn't have time. If you guys could have seen me like a couple days ago, I haven't been all that well. However, I'm really happy to be here tonight. So you can make your handles, like I said, months in advance, whatever you want to do. But it's really not something you would even attempt with regular clay. If something's bone dry, you're like, oh, I got to slake it down, or, you know, going to start over. And you would never join two pieces of clay that, like, one's bone dry and one's leather hard. That's a massive no-no. But with paper clay, you can. When working on a wheel, does paper absorb more water than usual? Not that I've noticed. I don't throw with it often because, you know, things dry out quick enough. And a lot of what I throw is the body of functional wear. But you could try and let us know. Brush on glaze, I don't, and I do not do 3 coats. I am a dipper. I have brushed a little bit. I'm a sprayer and I'm a dipper. That said, if you did 3 coats and you're a brusher, I'm not judging you, we're all different, right? Definitely want to use a banding wheel, and you definitely want to let it dry between, because it is going to get soft if you're doing single fire, if you're brushing glaze onto greenware. Remember, it's paper clay, which is awesome, but it's still greenware. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the stamp. Yeah. It's not really my idea. It was my idea to make paper clay of it, but man, Van Gilder, there's so many good potters on you know, the interweb. Yeah, I am feeling better, thank you. And it's so nice to get all that love. Yeah, I know, like 10 days, you know. I still have a little fever, but you can tell, I'm good, right? I'm here, I'm good. Okay, so again, I would never join, and I would never tell somebody like, yeah, it's cool, just go ahead and join those two. But you definitely can. If you're gonna make paper clay slip really quickly, you just take like boiling hot water and you put some of your toilet paper in there. You don't mash it up because you don't want to compress that and make like wads. Just let it dissolve in an hour or 15 minutes overnight, however you want to do it. Don't worry about the water. You're going to pour most of that off. Again, without compressing it, just pour most of that off and put some dry clay bits in there. But be sure to label it. That only has a shelf life of a week or so. That too will harbor black mold. That too needs to be treated with, you need to be cautious about that. It is the black mold that can eat, you know, drywall. That's the same concept. So don't mess that up. However, you're not wasting your time. If you use a hand mixer and you make some really good paper clay slip out of porcelain or whatever your dried bits are, you can let it dry out between sessions and just re-wet it, and it'll last forever. But like I said, do label it. Thanks, camera angle's good. Yes, my husband helped me with that. We're in isolation, so I'm like in the house without a mask. This is awesome because, you know, this is the only place I could do it. So yeah, I've been in isolation, I don't know how many days, but the fever started Thursday. Today's day 10. So, and I won't know, I got tested, so we'll see. I won't know until I have to remain in isolation under 6 days or so. Okay, instead of spraying water, what if you use vinegar? Okay, so the thing about that, magic water and vinegar, the little tricks to get around using straight water, like less hydrated fluid is the trick there, don't really benefit paper clay. Water is the bomb because, and if you have a crack, you know, like earlier I was saying, you let it, you force it, let it dry out. It's like, it's so freeing as a potter. You're like, just walk out of the art center and let it dry. You know, everybody else is like, okay, so you let it dry because you want to see those cracks. You want it to dry out between sessions so that it builds strength and it reveals any little, you know, unstable parts. And then you're gonna wet the heck out of those with this or with a saturated sponge. And you can, like, it'll get soft. It just takes a few minutes. And then you're gonna rejoin and you're gonna use paper clay slip. Yummy. This was totally dry. It's not all smooth and lovely like it was, but it was dry. Like I used it a month ago and you know, of course I let it dry out. So I just wet it for tonight's special event. And I gotta go get one thing out on my porch. I'll be right back. To prevent mold, no, I think vinegar kills mold and I think that's good. I know that bleach can help. I know that borax can be a retardant. However, you're still going to have organic matter, which is what this is made of, even when it's clean. You're still going to have that, and that's what the black mold, which is pretty much everywhere, is going to feed on. So you don't want that. Mold is okay in clay, and you know, anytime you see mold, it doesn't mean it's black mold. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's actually generally considered a good thing in clay. However, not in paper clay, because just like your walls, like you don't, it's like gypsum and paper fiber, cellulose fiber, that attracts black mold, so you don't want that. You do have to throw it out, but you can be smart about it, and you can dry these chunks out. Like these handles, they're strong. I can toss them in a drawer. I can use them in 5 years if I want, or just wet them and start making clay. So yeah, I don't think the vinegar helps. I know borax helps a little, but you just have about a week or so. Like I said, unless you have a hot, if you live in Florida and have a hot minivan, you don't have a whole week. It might happen early. So yeah. Okay, so I could probably get around it. But basically, so you can join like a wet piece of regular clay with paper clay. You'd think I would have all my tools out. And like I said, the shrink rate isn't really going to be a problem because the paper clay is going to flex a lot, and that's what's going to be good. I don't know, I'm not really crazy about this handle, but I'm going to make it work. So there you go. And I do not have a banding wheel on me, but Yeah, so basically you take your paper clay handle, and you just like set it in water. I'm like, yeah, such a goober. You remember Palmolive? Like, you're soaking in it. That's what this is. So you just like, if this were totally bone dry, I would just be soaking in it. And then I'd let it set there on a sponge for a minute or two. And that's that. You can slip and score. You should, I think, when it's something like a handle. But in some cases, like in the book Rosette Galt has, you don't even have to do that, which is kind of cool. Like, she has a technique where she lays a bowl, like a glass dish, and she does coil joins where they literally just bind to one another. I know, right? So it's revolutionary. I still think it's awesome. It's been a few years and I'm still way into it. But, you know, it's not for everybody, but it can really help you out. I'm just going to join. What's fun about this, too, is texture and things. You know, that little ugly duckling part where you got to, like, let your pot be an ugly duckling. You can let your clay, you can let it get really hard and then do other fixes to it, which is kind of nice. So, yeah, so you really can have, like, this is not going to be a problem when it fires. It's going to bind pretty nicely. It's on there pretty solidly. And you can, like, I sometimes dry these with a torch, a blowtorch. The handles, not the mug. No problem whatsoever, which is kind of cool. Hi, Tim. So fun to see you guys. So, that's my paper clay demo. I don't have any ads. I know I feel like such a saleswoman because I'm like, oh, it's awesome, it's lighter, it's stronger. I'm still pretty excited about it. Like I said, I never bought the commercial stuff, but I'm open-minded, and you should try it. Just if you have something you need to fix or just want to give it a try. So good to see you, Tim. Wanted to try paper clay. Yeah, I think just for the joy of like squeezing it, it's spongy and kind of fun in that way. Yeah, any other questions? Tim, the tech that I mentioned earlier, like, is the only mistake we had was that, like, picking up a piece of greenware that had glaze on it, which you just would not expect in a high fire, and I did have to get special permission for, but we never had any problems with it. I don't know, I think it's kind of cool to think that you could, and I kind of just want to fire like a big block of it now. I'm not going to do that, but you can. It's nice to know, you know, you can and you wouldn't have any problem with explosion. Already mixed and used it. Yeah, cool, very nice. Is the shrinkage rate same as the original clay? It's usually within 1%. And there is a book. I put a sheet of info, some notes, so you don't have to remember that. I did not hoard it. I did not. And I only spared a few squares. We live in two places, so just to clear my name here, I was getting the house ready for being rented out for 6 months. Weeks and weeks ago, I stocked up, not knowing. But anyway, I'm not that stocked. I'd share if I needed to. You can send me an email if you need toilet paper. I'll send you enough to make a batch of paper clay. That's not a lot. Yeah, thanks. She put my Facebook page. You can be my friend, as long as you're nice. As Holly Jones or Holly Jones Ceramics or Hoosier Pottery. Yeah, and I'll show you one more thing for those of you that weren't here in the beginning. Put a couple pieces up. There's a picture of those little cicadas from paper clay porcelain slit who survived the ash of a wood fire kiln. And this is Shelly. She's for my mailbox. She's a sculpture, paper clay. Shelly's gonna go on the mailbox, and she's already got a high fire, looking good. She got a glitzy little, I did some epoxy over her because she had a little break, that happens. And she's a two-piecer. Come on. All right. I'm gonna set her down. So again, I wanted her to be strong enough that I could sculpt her and take her back and forth. I actually made her at the beach, which was kind of fun. Because you can let it dry so quickly. So it's good and strong, her shell. Her base is like a flange that I'll attach them to. Thanks. And I didn't name her. My instructor did. She just mentioned that it was getting Shelly. And I was like, oh, that's the name. Anyway, don't you think my mail carrier is gonna chuckle? Because down here it's like the beach thing, and there are people that have like dolphins and manatee. I'm like, no, I want a snail. Anyway, she's a little bit lighter, she's a little stronger. She was good and green, and the first one I made cracked, and I was like, what was I thinking? I should just do paper clay. So Shelly is a paper clay sculpture. That's nice and light, and will hopefully make my mail carrier chuckle. What was the name of the lady again? Rosette Galt. And her book, and a link to her book, not that I'm selling or get a percentage, is on the little sheet that I posted on Clay Buddies. So hopefully we'll have that. I hope that this helps you, and I hope that you try it. You know, it's worth a try. If there's a piece you love you need to try to fix, it's always worth a try. You can re-bisque, but there's really good information. This woman has a PhD, and she studied it and did research, and she does a great job in her book of just making it easy to understand for folks like me. And I kind of wish it was here with me. I had to do a lot of this from memory. But yeah, it really works. It's pretty cool. And I think it could help a lot of potters do some new things or try something different. So Rosette Galt. And paper clay, yeah, no, I don't use it on everything. Yeah, I do handles for functional wear. You know, I don't want my teacup to conduct that much heat. You know, like my casserole bowl and stuff, the handles are good, but I don't, and you know, it just depends on how much time I have and where I am. I move a lot now, so it's really not, and I took like more than 6 months off, or didn't make anything. So it's good to be back. But it's also nice to have pieces that you can leave laying around and just pick them up and start working on them like a year or two later. That's my kind of thing, with no patience and procrastinating. So thanks again, everybody. Yeah, I'm really happy that you're trying it out. Yeah, send me your notes. Let me know. Tell me how it worked out for you. I'm happy to help anybody learn something, make the medium grow a little. And again, thanks for tuning in at such an important time for all of us to come together. Yeah, glad I could help. Good reason to be here. Yep. Yay, I'm muddy. Sign of a great time. I'm almost 100%. I figure I'm 90-ish, yeah. Thanks, folks. Thanks for the kind words. Thanks, Mel. Good to see you guys. Even the little moniker. Yay. I'm feeling better. Yep. You're welcome. Yeah. And check out the note sheet. You don't have to memorize all this. But now you know you can make your own paper clay whenever you want. Yep. Just be careful with your resources, folks. It's not all that common anymore. Okay. Bye-bye, guys. Okay.